Hey, this is going to be a Q&A about terrain, and I got an email. My email is in the description for this video. That said, "Good day, Bo. I'm not sure if you discussed this, but what is the standard terrain composition for a tabletop tournament of bolt action?" I have discussed this, and I've even linked a video where I sort of set up what I think could be a standard, but the problem is there isn't a standard. Um, I'll read the rest of the text and then answer. My group is planning to attend a local tournament and would like to practice on a regulation table. Understandable. Secondly, what can we expect? How do you suggest to order your turn zero based on what terrain is provided by an organizer? For your information, the organizer has only published the missions, not the tables. Right. So let's start with the start. Um, the standard composition for a tabletop terrain bold action, there isn't one. Uh, Warlord Games has not set out a standard for what is supposed to be on a table, and I have seen everything from an actual bare mat till to tables that were completely unplayable because half of the table um, was blocked and the other half was ocean. Um, so it can vary wildly. Um, and for myself, the tournaments that I'm hosting, and this is what I'm advocating also here on this channel, is I think we should have some sort of standard. And I'll in the description I'll write up what I did with the Sealand Open tournament, which was a competitive event. Lots of good players coming to Denmark. And I think we had 28 players or something like that. We had 13 to 15 pieces of terrain pieces of what a terrain piece is was also defined. That was what we wrote out to the participants, that each table would have 13 to 15 pieces of terrain. Then because of the tournament was hosted by myself and one of the members of my local game club, and we have so much terrain in that game club, so we could actually supply the terrain for all the tables, um, which meant that we could just set up a box and players could just open that box and set up the terrain that was in the box for each table. So each table was pretty much standardized, and I'll show some of the tables to you in a minute. And I would argue that all TOs should do something like this, but it is pretty standard that TOs don't do this in advance, and there are several reasons. One, it might not be the TO who's actually supplying the terrain. It might be some of the players going there, because that is also pretty standard. That at events there will be a call out for people to bring their tables, their terrain, and you can't sort of in advance tell people what they have to set up, right? Um, so there isn't really a standard composition. There isn't really a standard amount of terrain, and there isn't really a standard way to set it up. And Warlord Games has not defined this. So practicing on a standard regulation table isn't really a thing that you can do. But what you can do is you could write to your TO and say, what do you expect? How much terrain do you expect to be there? You could even show him this video and say, Bo talks about this. Where do you stand on this? Um, because setting expectations, that should be pretty open and pretty much out there in advance. Before Sealand Open, I had made the video linked in the description, but on setting up a table for Sealand Open. So I had actually made a video where I would set up a table um, with the thought processes that was going on, like how do I want to block line of sight, how much terrain do I want, where do I want to place it, sort of ish, so that I get a balanced table. And all of that was done beforehand so that people who were setting up tables could have seen it. Um, so, but many tournament organizers uh, one, they don't know. Two, they are calling out for terrain, so that is not really a thing that you can do, unfortunately. You can always ask, and maybe you'll get, I don't know. Um, what you should expect though is most tournaments, because if the tournament organizer is bringing the terrain, their collection is going to be stretched, especially if it's a well-intended tournament. So the collection is going to be stretched, which means that terrain is going to be typically less than you'll see on the average um, historical slash hobbyist game board at home. Um, just because you're setting up multiple tables, right? Um, but there'll also be a consideration there because some tables I've seen, and I have a video of me going to a friend's house and playing on his wonderfully looking Normandy board, and and he if he puts out all the terrain that he wants to on his board, it's almost unplayable for some types of units, like your wheeled vehicles. It can't move through Bakash tables, right? It can be completely blocked off. There's no way to move through that. Um, so most TOs will at least try, or if they're setting up, will try to get tables where all types of units can work on the table. And that, of course, also means that you'll have a lot more open terrain than is realistic in a setting, right? Um, so that's a consideration as well. That some people might want to like set up tables in a way that would benefit all units. There are even some TOs and people who set up tables so that it doesn't benefit all, which I think is a little bit of a cheeky move, right? Um, and the amount of terrain on the table and the types of terrain on the table can really change up your plans. So, for instance, I often play assault armies. I've just finished my partisans, took them to a tournament, won that, um, and and the partisans are really a close combat army. Um, they haven't got much else to play around with. I play my British as close combat armies. Japanese close combat. I mean, I really like my close combat armies, right? Um, and for that, assault armies really need close down terrain. They need a lot of line of sight blockers. So some tables are more beneficial to that. So does it change? That's the second question. Does it change your turn zero setup based on the terrain? Yes. When I go to a table, the turn zero thing that I made a video about recently, um, is always your plan in advance, the enemies list, and the terrain on the table. Those three factors sort of make a little math piece in your head where you're like, okay, so my plan was to go to one flank. Which flank do I use depending on terrain? Do I still want to do that flank push just now that I've seen the enemy's list? All of that is going through your head. Um, so so the turn zero is really beneficial, but you always have to modify it by the enemy and the table itself. So yeah, not massively helpful, I know, but I'm really trying to give you what you need. Here at the end, I want to show you the tables that I made for Sealand Open, just so you know what could be, isn't, but could be standard at a tournament. So this is one of the tables of my club. Um, most of the terrain here was made by me, by the way, not the house though. But you can sort of see that this has a lot of line of sight blockers, right? There's a forest here that blocks line of sight, so you do have some openings, but not a lot. There's a road that goes down the middle, could be really beneficial if you have like double envelopment, but it's blocked. Like this pile of wood here blocks the road. So those are considerations that you'll typically see on tournament tables. This is another table of terrain from the club. Again, some of it made by me, the trench lines and the like fences here. I made that. But again, you'll see that there isn't a road that goes straight. It has a few turns in it, and there's a lot of line of sight blocked around the place, mostly on this side, of course, with the houses here blocking line of sight. Um, but then there's a lot of area terrain, or no, not area terrain, linear obstacles that you can hide behind. Um, Here again, we have one, there's some line of sight blockers. These trench lines here are very tall, so also they block line of sight. So there's sort of an equal amount of line of sight block on each side, more or less. Um, and still some openings for vehicles to go through. Here is a table that's a little bit more open. This is my desert buildings, but you'll see that there are still these forests that can close down line of sight, with an opening here in the center and one over here. Here's another table, again of club terrain. Again, some forests blocking line of sight, a road going down. I think in the end we actually put like a truck here that blocked the road. I can't remember, but I think we did. Another little farmyard here, line of sight block. These walls were very tall, by the way. So this block line of sight, this did, and this did. So it's very balanced. You can actually see it's mirrored on the axle here. And the final one here. Right. So those are tables that you might expect to see. And these adhere to the 13 to 15 piece standard that I had for this tournament. Right. So that was it for me. I hope you enjoy your tournament. I hope your TO has something for you, but I would ask him to just like post a picture of what he thinks is a good tournament table, at least, so you can do some standard practicing. I would also suggest that you practice on like very dense tables and very open tables, so you have a lot of practice with both kinds. Right. Cheers.